All right, everyone, welcome back to another podcast episode. Today we have Todd Hausberger on with us from FFL. By the time you're viewing this episode, it'll probably be next week, about the 19th. So I'm going to let Chris and Todd kind of go into what we're going to talk about today. But first, Todd, if you want to introduce yourself and what you do in the industry, that would be great.
Yeah. So I got licensed back in 2003, and for the first chunk, probably about 17 years, I sold supplemental policies like cancer policies, heart accident, that type of stuff. And we knock on doors. So that was fun. So I did that for a while and started out in Phoenix, Arizona, where I graduated from Arizona State. And now I live in Nashville, Tennessee. So, and I've worked with Family First Life for my 2-year anniversary was last month.
Outstanding. So a lot of people in the business don't even make it 2 years, let alone 2 years at the same organization. It seems like sometimes people are hopping quicker than frogs in the backyard. Todd, talk to us in the beginning about working with no leads, because we're going to progress through the beginning of your career to your diversity in your experience now. But a lot of agents refuse to do anything if they don't rush leads 5 minutes from their home. Talk to us about your beginnings with no leads in the industry.
Well, you don't know what you don't know, right? So with that company, I mean, we would start people off on crazy low comp, 30%, and then you could work your way up to 81%. And yeah, I mean, we were told to go knock on doors, and primarily residentially. They started to work a little bit more into the B2B market as time progressed there. But yeah, I mean, you don't know what you don't know. So, I mean, we thought that the comp was fine. We thought that knocking on doors was fine. We just didn't know. We didn't know any better.
But you still found a way to be successful, make money, and still sell a product regardless of the environment that was around you at the time.
Of course, yeah. I mean, it's a grind no matter where you're at, right? Whether with or without leads, high comp, low comp, doesn't really matter. Obviously, with higher compensation, it makes it a little bit easier to stay afloat, keep your business afloat and stuff. But yeah, at the end of the day, I mean, you just have to make a decision if you're going to be successful and if you're going to achieve your goals, or if you're going to give up, with the first or 50th road bump in the road.
I think that's an interesting point you just made. Like you believe you make the decision to be successful, while other people might make the decision to quit. And I think a lot of times folks don't really realize until they've made that decision, they're actually choosing one path or the other. You make that take place. So Todd, as you've gotten further in your career, you've diversified with leads, different products to sell, but still managed to be successful throughout that. Is it that same trait that allows that to happen? Or what do you think allows you to continue to be good at different parts of the industry?
Well, so once, I kind of referenced the Matrix, right? It's taken, I think it's the red pill, I can't remember. But once your eyes have been opened up and now you see, oh my gosh, there's a whole nother world out there where you can work off of leads, and then where you can, have, higher compensation than what you're used to. I mean, it really did. It was because a lot of us came from that practice company. It really was like pouring gas on the fire, because I'd given up on the dream and the goal of becoming an agency owner just because I saw time after time after time that, most of the people that I recruited into that business, starting at 30% and having them go knock on doors, I mean, most of them left in a worse financial spot than when they actually started. So to come over here and to see like I can actually put people in a better spot, and then the choice is always up to them, right? Whether or not they're going to be successful or not. But it stacks the odds in their favor when you've got higher compensation, when you're working off of leads. And so I basically got my dream and my goal back of becoming an agency owner. So yeah, I've just been, full force ever since.
I like that. Joe, do you feel like it's a decision as well? Like you decided to, in many cases, will Toolkit into existence to be successful at Medicare and final expense. Do you feel like you make a conscious decision to become a successful business owner?
I think you do. I think a lot of times you have to surround yourself with people who know what they're doing, because I don't think we would have gotten this far without, it's not just me behind a computer all day. So a lot of people have that misconception, especially with agency owners. It's not them running the business. They might be helping, but it's other agents. So it's making sure you're around people who want to do the work and who care about doing a good job and are motivated to do that. So I think that's probably the biggest thing, is it's not there's no such thing as a self-made billionaire, millionaire. There's always people who are, maybe if you're like day trading Bitcoin or something, there's always exceptions to the rule. But I think especially in insurance, no one is going out and doing everything on their own. Even if it's an assistant or someone that you pay to help you, it's important to have those people around. So,
Todd, do you day trade Bitcoin?
All day, baby, all day.
Awesome. So next topic for us, when things aren't going well, even though you've made the decision to be successful, you're buying leads, you found a good system and people to work on, but things still aren't going well, how have you remained accountable to yourself to not quit and accept that there's good days and bad days in the industry?
Well, and I know obviously we're not the only IMO out there that has an exit strategy, but from where I came from, there wasn't an exit strategy. And they had a marketing agreement that you had to sign. It was very loosely written, a lot of gray area. So after a couple of agents decided to come over and work with us, they, essentially stole about $15,000 of residual income that I was receiving a month that I'd built up for my second time over there. So in 7 years, and you couldn't sell your book of business. So here, like there's light at the end of the tunnel, again, just like other IMOs, you can actually, there's an exit strategy where you can sell your book of business and kind of take it to a whole new level,
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Having a goal and having an end goal in mind helps you arrive there. I think a lot of agents in this industry don't know where they're going, let alone day to day, week to week, and month to month. You have an end goal that you're continuing to work towards, because that's kind of pushing you to that point. Talk about what you're selling these days. You kind of gave us a preview before we went on record, and I think it's a little fascinating to hear what others are doing in the industry, because there's many different ways to make money and help families in this business.
For sure. Yeah. So I primarily focus on, final expense, whole life, mortgage protection, term, and then IULs. I've written a handful of annuities. Haven't done too many supplements since I've come here, and then we're just getting ready to dive into the Medicare side of things and stuff. But I haven't sold a policy yet with Medicare yet.
Cool. So you're very well versed on the life side. What do you feel like would be a helpful tip for a new agent to hear who feels a little overwhelmed with all the things they could potentially sell, and it's kind of falling victim to paralysis by analysis?
Yeah, so we typically have our newer agents stick to final expense whole life when they first get started, just because it's so simple. The whole process. You can't, obviously you can overthink anything, right? But with final expense, it's pretty cut and dry. They can either afford it or they can't afford it. They can either qualify for it or they can't qualify for it. But from where we came from with being a captive agent and representing one company, like there was plenty of times, I don't know, probably 30 to 40% of the time where you sit down with somebody and they either had a better product or they couldn't get a cancer policy because they're currently going through cancer, had cancer within the past 10 years. And you couldn't do anything about it. But when you're in the IMO space, if you're between a newborn to 90 years old, I could probably put some type of policy in place for you. So it's just a different deal when you're looking at the final expense, and there's just more moving pieces to the mortgage protection, the term, and then also with the IUL. So I typically have them start simplistically with the final expense whole life, and then kind of graduate and work their way into products that just have a couple more moving pieces to it. So
makes sense. Joe, when you started in the industry, talk to us about if you use that keep it simple to start methodology, or kind of some of the stuff you did in the beginning?
When I started, I was doing just well, it was both final expense and mortgage protection. I was on a this is impossible now, but I was getting $32 fresh mortgage protection leads, and I got like a weekly amount of like 10 or so in Philadelphia because I started in rural Virginia where it was a mix. But it was definitely difficult at first because I didn't really know what I was doing. I didn't have an active upline. I didn't have the toolkit, so it was pretty much on my own. 18, I look like I'm 14 going into people's homes, and which is surprisingly, it's an excuse a lot of people make. It didn't make any difference at all. I think there was one instance in my entire career where I got discriminated against because I looked younger, but I've never noticed. I mean, these people don't notice. They answer the door in their diapers half the time. In Delaware County, I had several cases where they literally answered the door, nothing but a diaper on. So you're more intimidated of them than they are of you, is what I always thought about it as. But I think to better answer the question, the toughest part for me was just learning how to talk to the people, because if you just bring it up to them, the insurance, you can often give them a more competitive product than what they have, what they've been pitched, or Colonial Penn, or if they're looking at a senior life or they have it. I would say most of, at least for me personally, because Chris and I work in an area, there's a lot of agents, there's a lot of ads. It's an urban area. There's just a lot of people. So most of my business was just replacements because they would get, and learning how to do that effectively, I became pretty good at that in framing it in the way that what you have isn't bad, but there's something newer that's better, or it's a lower rate. And it's just cutting through the fluff of like, this funeral program with senior life is not going to save you the equivalent of $40 a month on your premium. If it's so great, it should be a one-time fee and you don't need to pay 20% more a month for this nebulous thing. So it was learning how to combat that. And maybe that's something that's not talked enough about in the industry, but how to effectively replace without bashing what the financial decision that person's made, because people don't like that. They don't want to be told they made an awful decision. They've been paying for 10 years. They're not going to trust any agent, including you. So I learned how to effectively frame it as like, this is fine, but I can give you something much better. And you can get your, learning how to use reduced paid up and these terms that sound intimidating, but are super simple. It's as easy as pointing to the policy. This is how much you have. We're going to call and get the amount. We're going to make sure we get you approved today. And then provided that happens, you're going to be in a much better position. So there's always people that will say no matter what, but I would say most 80% plus of those situations where it's like a no-brainer, I could, at the very least, compliantly get a Medicare out of it or something else, but often was replacing the policy.
So you basically said stop making excuses and stop being intimidated by the people, because you're far more intimidated by them than they really are of you. Todd, I cut you off there. What were you thinking about that?
I was just going to say, so Joe, were the adults wearing diapers that answered the door, or was it the kids?
It was adults always. Well, there's some kids around that were appropriately in diapers, but there was full-grown adults, diapers, bathrobes. I mean, when you've done final expense, I've
never seen that. I can safely say in almost 20 years, I've never had an adult answer.
Well, you need to work in the greater Philadelphia area. I mean, I have a video of a guy. I went to an appointment. He's urinating on the side of the house, and I'm like, "Hey, you ready for the appointment?" He's like, "I'm peeing," and he's yelling, and I have the roof. And it was in Delaware County, right when you're in Chester, right where those car chases happen on that long stretch of highway before you take the exit. He's just on the side of his house, didn't care. And I actually did sell the policy to the wife, so you just have to get through it, ignore it, and
yeah.
That's crazy, man.
My true blue bedbug experience came in Chester, PA, just off of 2nd Street. And I just replaced 2 Lincoln Heritage policies, the classic ghetto special. They had Direct Express. And I exited the home, looked down, and there were several things crawling on me that didn't belong there.
Oh,
and there are a few days I quit early in this business. That was one. And my place nude, immediately put my clothes into the machine. And that was the end of that day.
I've yet to experience that too, and I've been in some pretty rough places. But no bed bugs, thankfully. So,
I'll tell you a Nashville story real quick, then we'll get back to some content. I was doing a ride along in an apartment building in Nashville, and I got a new trainee with me. Turned out to be a great agent, and he taught a lot of other guys as well. And we're sitting there, we're warming up with a lady. And I kid you not, there was a roach the size of my cat sitting in the living room floor. And no one's saying a word about this roach. And I'm thinking to myself, should I warm up with the roach? Is this actually her significant other? Does this roach have Social Security? It's massive. And eventually the roach leaves, I think. But there in Nashville are just as big a bug stories as maybe Chester, PA. So Todd, when did you decide you were ready to expand and do more than the simple products? Obviously, you got to have some money saved up. You got to be willing to learn something new. When did you say to yourself, hey, I'm ready to try something bigger than what I'm currently doing?
Now, are you talking about like fully medical policies, annuities, or what exactly are you talking about?
Like more than just your bread and butter final expense and mortgage protection, like an IUL product, ask about an annuity, like when you were willing to venture out of your main method of income.
Gotcha. Yeah, I definitely waited too long. I think it was probably 2 or 3 months before I started doing mortgage protection and term type policies or any type of IULs or anything like that. So what I tell my newer agents now is, wait 2 to 4 weeks, just wait until you feel like you really mastered, the final expense whole life side of things. And then we'll start adding in, the term and the mortgage protection and everything else, the IULs and everything along those lines.
Makes sense. Can you give us some quick tips on what a final expense agent could do in mortgage protection, like what that looks like to them? Because it's kind of a world that doesn't always blend together as much as maybe we think.
You mean like making the transition?
I think the best way I could say it is a lot of agents that are used to final expense are used to the diaper, peeing on the house, no bank account kind of clientele, and they're kind of intimidated by middle America, and maybe they shouldn't be, like we're saying. But talk about the difference between those two crowds and how you really can do both. Yeah.
Well, I mean, so most of our agents, obviously not all, but most of our agents, are typically from middle America, right? Middle class. And then if they, have some success early on, I mean, they'll be there really quickly. So, I mean, when you're dealing with final expense, you're dealing more with the middle class to lower lower income folks. And then with mortgage protection, the term, you're dealing more with middle class to upper middle class. So, I mean, since most of our agents are typically, middle class and above, I mean, you're just dealing with your peers, you're dealing with people that are college educated, both spouses employed, both spouses working, having a bank account instead of direct express, So it's just a different, it is a little bit of a mind shift change, but I don't think it takes too long to make that change. One clientele typically doesn't have a lot of money, and then one clientele typically has the money to pay for it. It's just getting them to, come across the table with you to make that decision of investing in what you're showing them.
Cool. Makes sense. What else do you think really stops agents from being successful besides mindset? Plenty of agents can make it just far enough and then they fail. What do you think kind of causes that in the industry?
Yeah, mindset, lack of vision. But I think at the end of the day, and I think you all might agree with me on this, it's just the work ethic, and not having the proper vision of seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. And I always try to use like a sports analogy with new people, if they played any type of sport. So like I played soccer up until like the pandemic, right? So, but like when I started when I was 3 years old, like, obviously it was like a mess. It was like Pigpen, these kids running around this dust cloud, type of deal. But you work your way up, and, a lot of times you'll eventually, play in school or play on like some type of travel team, blah, blah, blah. But it didn't start that way. So people want to be hitting 10,000 plus a week their first week or second week. And then if they're not, they quit, not seeing that it takes time to hone their skills and to get product knowledge and to put a lot of different things in place for them to be able to have the success that maybe someone like, us have had, been in the industry going on 20 years. You can't compare someone that has no industry or no experience to someone that has, going on 20 years experience,
I like that. Vision plus work ethic gets you where you're trying to go. And it gets you to, like you said in the very beginning, that end goal that you have in mind. So if somebody hasn't watched the entire length of this video, they're missing thousands and thousands of dollars of valuable content just kind of plugged into the ends of conversation here. So Todd, we try to keep these short so folks will watch the whole thing. Within the last few minutes that we have here, promote yourself, let folks know how they can get in contact with you. Maybe they really connected and said to themselves, I want to work with that guy or learn more about him or follow him online. So take a few minutes, promote yourself, and let the folks know how they might be able to get a hold of you.
Cool. Well, you can find me on all social media platforms, Family First Life, Phoenix Financial. You can also call me on my cell phone at 615-431-9554. And then, with Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, all those different social media platforms. You can either find me under my business name, my agency name, or just me personally. And then with I'm the only Todd Hausberger in the entire United States. So I'm really easy to find. So
fortunately for you, you are the only Todd, and I'm one of about 150 Chris Smiths just with an insurance license in this industry.
I actually have a good buddy of mine that's a Chris Smith. So
Joe, is there an agency discount if your name is Chris Smith?
We should make a Facebook group just for insurance toolkits users who are named Chris Smith. Another joke we have is we have a lot of not even real football players. We have people who have the names of famous. We have a Russell Wilson using it. We have a number I think we have a Tom Brady. We have a number of people who are not that person. We do have Sean Merriman, who's with FFL and who's an actual football player, but we have a lot of. It's funny that we'll see Russell Wilson just signed up. I guess he's not not doing too well with the Broncos, but.
Well, the guys, thanks for tuning in. Todd, thanks for joining us, giving us 20 minutes of your time. And if you guys are watching, please like the video. As my kids would say, comment below and subscribe. The more you interact with YouTube, the more YouTube shows this content to others who might not even know it exists. And your like might change somebody else's trajectory in the industry. So like, comment, and subscribe. Todd, thanks for being with us today. And
thank you.
Joe, any closing words?
That would be it. Thank you guys all for watching today.